which is about the craziest thing I have ever heard. But I'll let Mike explain that.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Little, and thank you, Harry, and thank you for the opportunity to address the audience today. I really like the idea of this is an opportunity to educate and share, and I'd like to thank John and Michelle and Josh that I can't wait till we get to questions and answers. I have some myself. The particular executive order that I'm speaking to today is the one that basically offers employees the first right of refusal to the predecessor. If a contractor bids and wins a contract, then it has to offer right of first refusal to the existing contractors that may be the incumbents. It's kind of in a nutshell what it's about. All three of the executive orders that were signed 2 weeks ago, they were union-friendly bills. They facilitate things such as jobs that may have already been unionized, but they certainly will remain unionized if you pick up a majority of union employees. My concern, I think I'll take this to a little bit more of a personal direction. Mm-hmm. I think over the I opened my first business in 1984, and I find myself conflicted in many ways. While as a business person, I certainly agree and view the competitive market space as one that, as a small minority-owned business, that effort to be competitive and compete in a market space that is defined by how the market works. On the same side, I certainly take a social responsibility and advocacy in terms of helping those who need help. But from a business perspective, minority businesses and small businesses are businesses. We don't operate in a unique vacuum world that is isolated. That means we don't have to deal with the same things that all other businesses deal with. In fact, I think that we're probably a step further away than what most businesses have to deal with. And I say that from the context that while we are business, we typically find ourselves aligned with parties seem to be extreme. We're extremely this direction or extremely that direction. And I think as people and certainly as business owners, we find ourselves being kind of in the middle. We don't agree with anybody all of the time. And there are principles and values from both parties that we do tend to agree with that fit us personally. But I think the bigger picture is minority businesses and small businesses are hurt the most in the union-friendly approaches and the things that get away from best value, things that kind of undermine. I think somebody talked about Davis-Bacon, and we talk about things like living wages that are not just at federal levels but continue to come out through states and local municipalities. Those things tend to protect a status quo and create an environment that is union-friendly. And I'm not saying I'm against unions. I'm saying I want to have an opportunity to compete. And I think most other small and minority businesses want to have an opportunity to compete. And many times things are presented in a way from more of a social perspective that give the impression that it will be okay for small and minority business. And in cases of these three executive orders, and particularly the one that, for small businesses, probably your most important asset are your employees. Well, if it gets written in a contract that the company that's bidding and may be selected by law has to offer first right of refusal to an incumbent's employees, then think about the impact that could potentially have on a small business or a minority-owned business. I mean, somebody's going to take your employees and you really don't have a say. You aren't in that game. Now, as a small business owner, to me, it kind of sounds and feels like there may not have been some considerations and a thorough fleshing out of what the implications for some of these executive orders are for small and minority business. Mm-hmm. I think that we have to be involved in that process. We have to weigh in. I'm glad to see that we're having these kinds of forums where we have an opportunity to educate and express our concerns. So while I talk about that one order and the small impacts of it, I think from a bigger picture, we have to be conscious that small businesses are business. If it's normally a negative impact on any business, it's even a bigger impact on small and minority businesses. And I can't think of any instance where that hasn't been true unless there is something very specifically that exempts small businesses from that. And in this case, the exemption applied to businesses that are doing the less than $100,000 contracts. Well, now that's real small, and that might be a job for somebody. But if you're going to have a business and grow a business, you're not going to grow very big $100,000 contract at a time. So I'm not saying there's not any provision there, but that's not the means that we can grow viable businesses and develop wealth within our communities. So I am a small business and minority business advocate, and small means different things to different people. In a federal environment, small is bigger than it is to many people in the general population. But I think that this organization and other organizations, we have to continue to press and educate. Instead of having parties and politicians define our values and what our best interests are, we have to participate in that process and push our perspective forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I think that's just very dangerous. If you got people who've been with you 10, 15, 20 years, and you get a contract and they're going to tell you that these people can't work on your job and you got to take Joe's people, the first thing Joe's people are going to do is sabotage your job so you can get fired so Joe can come back and get the job again. It's crazy.
Let me to one other point. The law basically gets down to where the people who are on the contract within the last 30 days of the contract, if you're an incumbent, those names and contact information must be provided, and that information comes out so that those people get an offer to come if they're qualified for the work and the approach. Well, if you think about it, if you're a small business, if you are getting other work, if you get within that 30-day window, you've basically just been told that you can't reallocate those resources that you may have been paying, that you may have invested in their training and their development for who knows how long. You can't move those people from here without them having to be put into that right of first refusal. And because contracts now where you're paying the wages by laws that are required that you must pay X amount, and these are the kind of contracts we're talking about being impacted. If you think about that, there aren't as many best value contracts being awarded anymore. Low price is kind of becoming king every day. If you're a small company and you have 50 employees and you're competing with a company that has 500 employees and you have to pay the same wages, a small company will never win. They can't compete with the overhead and G&A spreads that a larger company would have. The price breaks on volume kick in for larger companies, so smaller companies can never win competitively with larger businesses. So when you talk about everybody paying the same, on the one hand, that sounds good, that employees are going to make what's considered a fair wage and it's even, but there are a lot of people that don't have jobs that would work for less. That for small and startup companies is how you get into the competitive market space. When that's taken away, and it's being taken away more and more every day, not just the ones we've talked about at state level, at county levels, at city levels, then what it's really doing is eliminating opportunities that small businesses can compete in. So those kinds of issues are ones that we should continue to press on.
Thanks, Mike. And finally, we have John Macklin, who's going to give you a living